My conversation today is with two incredible women, Glauci and Nathália. Glauci is originally from São Paulo. She's been living in the US for 10 years, and she's lived in Germany before. She's also been on the podcast before, so go check out the episode with her if you haven't. Nathália is from Rio. She's been here in the US for 7 years, and before, she used to live in Singapore. Both these women have international careers and a lot of advice to share around living abroad. So if you also live outside of your country, or if that's something you want to pursue, come have a seat at the adults table and let's talk about living abroad. I'm Fernanda Rodriguez, and welcome to the adults table. So now I'm starting every episode asking my guest the same question, which is, what is one hard truth that only adults can handle?
I think it's the fact that you've got to do it yourself, whatever it is. It's laundry, if it's like problems in relationship, you're responsible for it. Kids are like, oh, whatever. I still haven't a grown up to do it for me. That's the reality. That's what we call life.
Yeah, I think I will steal your thought, Glauci. Yeah, having the responsibility, right? Especially after you have kids. I think, things become real serious because now it's not your life anymore and you're responsible for way more than that. So I guess, yeah, that's a hard thing that only adults can handle.
I agree. And no one's going to save you. Like, people can support you, but no one's going to come to save you. You got to do it yourself, and obviously with your partner or whoever, but that is true. Okay, this is how we start, but let's now talk about living abroad. So let's start with you, Nathália. Tell us a little bit more who you are and how you got here.
My name is Nathália. I'm natural from Brazil, Rio de Janeiro, more specifically Niterói. When I say Niterói, nobody that knows about that. And I had the opportunity to live abroad in 2011 with the company I was working for, a big mining company in Brazil, Vale. And then, it was a great opportunity. Back then, I was 26 years old, like I wanted to explore a new culture, a new life. And I didn't think twice. I accept the challenge. And this is like, I have to remember, because this is 2011, like we didn't have all the information, all the access to information we have today. So it's not that, I had all the answers I had about Singapore doing a Google search, but it's still, to me, it was, it was non-negotiable. Like, I'm going to take this opportunity and go and try. I lived there for around 7.5 years, and it was a great experience. I got to travel around and get to know so many people, so many cultures, so many things. And I met my husband there, John, from Chicago. And we moved to Chicago 7 years ago. And that's where I am like now. And I have 2 little kids. And Chicago is what I call home now.
So, Gala, how long have you been in Chicago again?
10 years.
10 years. Yeah. And then before, you also lived in Germany. Where else? And how did you get there?
Well, I have a relationship of love and hate with Germany, because when I did my sabbatical, I spent like 5 weeks in Berlin to study German. If you're wondering if I speak German, I do not, as life is too short to learn German. But then I moved back to Brazil, got this opportunity to move to Chicago, joined the company that brought me to Chicago in 2014, was working for this company for 1.5 years until I got my visa, and then moved to Chicago in 2015. Met my husband here, which is also Brazilian, coincidence, but got married, and then he works for a German company, and then he gets an opportunity to move to Berlin. So back to Berlin, where I used to live before I met him, which was another coincidence. But then we live 1 year in Germany, and then right before pandemic started, we moved back to Chicago. So it was more like things didn't work well for my husband, so he wants to move back. And that's the funny thing, we're both Brazilians, but we never thought of moving back to Brazil. We felt like Chicago is our home. This is something that's really, we can kind of like explain more throughout the podcast how hard it is to explain how you feel about how we feel about Chicago now. It's our home. And people are like, nah, home is Brazil. We were born in Brazil. I know, but we never really thought. So we moved back here on the week that the borders were closed.
Mm.
So we were very lucky, moved here. And then we made a vow we're never going to leave Chicago again. And here we are. So 5 years later, we're still here.
So how did you plan for that when you decided to move abroad? Was it something that simply came up and you went with it, or you always knew that you wanted to live abroad and you calculated step by step, you knew what the next step would be? What was the experience like in the planning phase for you?
Yeah,
Yes.
I never planned. And to me, going back 15 years ago, it was like my life was going to be, pretty much what the traditional style in Brazil, right? I'm gonna stay here, have a job, get married, have kids. That's it. Until I got this opportunity at my old company, which was like so, like, oh, wow, there is way more than that, right? I always had the curiosity to travel and explore other cultures, but not really living anywhere until that opportunity came up. And I'm like, yeah, I'm going to accept, I'm going to go, let's see what's it there. And what was interesting is that I had, I had a 2 years contract. And to me, like 2 years is the kind of a time frame that we can do anything in 2 years, right? If it doesn't work out, it's just 2 years of your life. And what is not working out? There is always learnings, there's always gains in that. And 2 years was like the perfect time frame. I end up staying 7.5. And yeah, and today I think it's similar to what you said. Like it's really hard to think about, a life back in Brazil. I think, home is pretty much where my family is, and we are in Chicago right now. But I don't think I have that desire.
Did you plan, because I know you're more of a planner, but did you plan yours?
I plan absolutely everything as we grow and older, we realize that your Excel spreadsheet will never going to be accurate. So when I moved, when I got the opportunity, well, let me rephrase it. When I went to my sabbatical first, then I visited like so many countries, I was like, okay, back to Brazil, and I felt like I didn't fit anymore. It's like, okay, maybe I need to move back. And I always have this thing with Germany. I want to move back to Germany because I spent like 5 weeks there. I think was amazing. I think was just like the start. There's so much more to learn and explore, blah, blah, blah. I want to go back. And then the opportunity came to Chicago. And it was a work opportunity. And I was like, I literally had to check Google Maps to see where Chicago was because I had no idea. Typically, Brazilians know New York, Orlando, and Los
LA.
Angeles. And stuff like or that's what you know. But I was like, Chicago, oh, okay. Midwest? Oh, whatever. Then while they're working on the work visa, that's the other thing. When you get a work visa, you have a date to move here, you have a date to go back. Because your visa expired. We're not gonna stay. I mean, legally, you cannot do it. So you have to go back. And I was like, okay, it's 3 years. That's the time I'm gonna spend in Chicago. Let's see what happens. I may move back before. I may want to stay more, and then I need to figure it out. So when I was here for like year and a half, 2, I felt like this is really home for me. São Paulo, I was born and raised in São Paulo. I was like, São Paulo is not home for me anymore. At least not the bubble I was part of. And then turns out
Yeah.
10 years ahead, I'm still here.
Yeah, the planning part is funny because I always knew that I wanted to live abroad. So the first time I used to dream about New York. Oh, New York is the best place because I used to watch Gossip Girl like shows, and I'm like, I want to live there. And the first time I went to New York, it was so cold, and I didn't have the proper clothes because I mean we don't have those types of winters in Brazil. That I cried. I'm like, I hate this. This is terrible. I never want to go back here. But I still kind of had that, in my mind, like, oh, I think I want to live abroad. And then I lived in Australia I studied abroad in Australia And I came back home earlier because I'm like, I'm homesick. I miss my family. I miss my friends. And then my Brazilian friends went back home. So I ended up going back home earlier as well. So I was always like, I really want this, but do I not? So it was kind of, I was like that for a little while. And then I wanted to work with in the entertainment in the industry with artists. So I want to be like a publicist for artists, and it's such a tough market. So I got a job at a tech company, and then 3 years that I was working in this tech company, I'm like, okay, what am I gonna do? What am I doing with my life? Am I gonna live abroad? Am I not gonna live abroad? And I wasn't doing anything to really plan for it or like, because I have friends who were very strategic about every move. Like, oh, I'm gonna do this MBA. I'm gonna do this because it's gonna take me to Europe. It's gonna take me to the US. So they had like step by step, really well planned. But I kind of had the goal that throughout time kind of went back and forth. And then at some point, 3 years later, I was like, in this company, I'm like, I need to pursue something that I actually like. So then I started manifesting, but I didn't know what I wanted. So I just said, "Universe, please God." I was like, just turn my life upside down. Whatever that means. Like I don't know what I want, but in order for me to know what I want like the most random situation. And then like the following week, I get a call from the company that I ended up moving to Colombia with, and I was gonna interview for to work with them in Boston. And then this guy called me and he's like, listen, we still want you to be part of the process, but now we're opening an office in Colombia, in Bogota. And I'm like, okay. He's like, do you want to interview there? And I'm like, okay. I made an agreement with the universe. I asked. And that's the thing too about the manifesting situation is that we ask for things, but when they come our way, we're not ready for them or we don't accept them or we're not, whatever. So I'm like, okay, I've never been to Colombia. I've never been to Bogota. I speak Spanish because I like Rebelde, RBD, Rebelde. But because it's a Mexican band. But like other than that, I had never been. And similar to you, I just Google and I talked to a friend who had lived there before, and I'm like, "What do you think of the quality of life?" And he's like, "It's great. Just go." And I did, and the rest is history. But like, I met Jeff there. It was a wonderful job, amazing job. I met amazing people. I met people from all over the world. It was amazing, amazing. But I just think it's funny how sometimes, yeah, for some people it works to like plan every single step, but sometimes life just throws you at a completely different direction and you go with it. Like you go to Singapore, you go to Germany again, you go, and you're like, okay, let's see where this takes us. And similar to what you said, it's like, okay, worst that can happen is that it goes quote unquote wrong, but even if it does, it's gonna teach me something, so might as well. So,
This manifestation thing
oh yeah.
really scares me. I was very surprised when you no, because it's real and we need to be very cautious because when it's like not so specific, anything can happen.
Anything, yeah. But serious, I mean, I I'm cautious to talk about this because I think today it's very romanticized. People are like, "Oh, do like your vision board and do this and do that." But this thing, like, it's powerful. It's insane. Yeah, I've had some crazy shit happen in my life because I set the intention and I said, like, I don't know, but it takes being open to whatever life throws at you because then I don't know. We could spend the whole day talking about this. But I want to go back to the home situation that we were talking about. So you both said that, oh, I didn't consider going back to Brazil. I feel like it wasn't home anymore. What do you mean by that? Like, how did you feel or how did you used to feel going back to Brazil or even today? Like, how can you explain the feeling?
But start.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah, for me, it's been, well, I mean, I've been abroad almost 15 years now. And, over such a long time, you really start disconnecting, right? At least in my case, I'm disconnected and outdated. When I go to Brazil, I always have a good time because I meet with my family and it's a good time, right? We don't share bad times anymore. We only share the good times. And the very few friends that stayed, right? But over like such a long time, like many people, like they are gone, right? We lose the link. We don't have the day-to-day conversations anymore. And that's my feeling. Like I don't know about the new music, the new artists, the new trends, and even politics, right? I read headlines, but I don't really understand deeply what's going on because I'm not living there. I'm not feeling. So Brazil to me, it's like a great vacation place, right? Where I know I'm gonna have a good time, a good 2 full weeks or 3 full weeks. Yeah, it's completely different from it was before I left.
It makes sense. I like when you say the outdated because I never really thought about it.
Same.
And yeah, it makes so much sense. You're like, you don't know what's hype anymore. Or someone asked me these days, oh, what did you do for a big birthday? Like your last big birthday. I was like, what people do in Brazil? I think that was the question. I was like, that's a very good question. I have no idea. Because it's been 10 years. So back in the day, there used to be like XYZ, but now I have no idea what's the hype. So the headlines on politics, same thing. We don't know exactly how it affects you directly because you're not there anymore. So you're just here. It's headlines plus perception from friends and family.
Right. Yeah.
That's how you make your own conclusions on that. It's
I'm not even able to give suggestions to people traveling to Brazil, right? They ask, what restaurants? What is like, what should I do? I'm like, oh my gosh, I don't know. I have to ask my friends there.
insane.
Yeah.
I have to ask friends, and it's the feeling of disconnection. It's hard to explain. It's just like I was part of a bubble, and then when I got back, it was just like, what are they talking about? It doesn't make sense anymore.
Yeah.
No, this is not how it works. And there's a whole world out there. Why you guys are like so close-minded, something like that. So that was the feeling, that was the click that I got. That was not part of that group anymore. And maybe I should live abroad and have another experience. Like living, not spending like 6 months traveling to different places, like set
Yeah.
like roots, so to say.
Yeah.
Somewhere. But it takes time.
And how much do you feel like you belong here? How much you feel the connection here? Or when you say that this is home, is it more like a feeling thing or is it more a practical thing or of my job is here, my family's here? I mean, I think family kind of gets in the emotional aspect. It's not like the objective, but like, do you feel that this is home because this is where you have your house, this is where you have your job, or how do you feel emotionally connected to here?
It started with the job for sure, because I moved because of the job and the quality of life that I had. Like right away, I could notice the difference between here and São Paulo. Unfortunately, I'm not happy to say that, but São Paulo is not the safest place in the world. So when I moved here, Chicago is a big city. All the big cities have their problems, but I did feel the quality of life that I have here is much higher compared to São Paulo, and the job, right? And then as the years went by, then I have a boyfriend that was promoted to Fernandes. And then now I have a family and now I have a house. So things were growing. Like I can visualize a tree with the roots. There was just like pé de feijão. And now it's like the full tree with lots of roots. As we spend more time here, it's growing. It feels even more like home.
Yeah. Perfect description. I will also still all of that. But emotionally, I think to me, I'm always chasing this sense of belonging, right? And I think this is endless. We get better, right? I feel in a way better position now than a few years ago, but it's constant inside. I want to belong to this community that I really don't, mirror myself. And in any conversation, in any day-to-day activity, I'm talking to people, and I later on I realized that I'm trying to match that person's style, right? And the accent and the way they dress and pausing, because Brazilians talk, and we right use our hands all the time. And I realized at some point this is not really what people do here. So let me just, pause and breathe and give that silence for a few seconds, which makes me extremely uncomfortable. But that's kind of the way that I was discovering how people are, and which makes me constantly anxious, right? And I can't get rid of this feeling, right? It became part of me. So yeah, it's interesting because like I see all the positives, right? Like, also, I came here, we didn't have much, and then I'm married, I have a house and 2 kids and everything, and life is, moving and stable, but at the same time, emotionally, I see myself in this situation where I'm not really part of this. And how can I be part of this? Always chasing.
Yeah, this is, I think we all share this feeling. And thanks for bringing this up because I, even this weekend that I told you that I was in, with some friends and I was also constantly in my head. And I think that once you're in this, like, we get to a position that we're hyper aware. So you're aware all the time of what you're saying, if what you said is right, if it's not right. If for me, sometimes when I'm talking or telling a story to someone, I'm thinking that okay, they cannot wait for the story to be over because they're getting annoyed by the fact that I'm maybe not using the right words, and I'm like, making the story longer because maybe I don't have the vocabulary or I don't have the, and they're getting annoyed or bothered by it. So I'm in my head as I'm like telling a story to someone, or I don't know. It's funny because I've been since I moved here, and I didn't feel this in Colombia, I think because the culture was so similar to Brazil, and I had so many Brazilian friends, and it was a very different moment in my life. And then here, it 100% feels like home, especially because of Jeff, and because the friends that we have here and all of that. But I think that I don't know, the feeling of belonging is something that I'm constantly chasing, and I've been here for 3 years. It hasn't even been that long, which is why I was curious to your experiences. But I don't know, is it something you think that we just have to live with it? And are there ways that we can maybe work on them? Because also, what I think is the answer is not, okay, so let me go back to Brazil. Because if you go back, then you don't belong there either. So there's really, to me, maybe it's just like accepting that your identity at some point is just fragmented, and some parts of you are going to belong more here, other parts of you are going to belong more there, other parts maybe belong elsewhere. But I've been thinking more and more about like what can I do to feel like I belong more. Even I just started seeing a therapist in English, which like I for a long time I'm like, does it make sense? Does it not? But then I was like, I need to create an emotional connection with the language that goes beyond what I have with my husband. Like, let me maybe talk about my feelings in English and see if that changes the way that I feel towards belonging. Right. So I'm curious, are there anything that you think you've done throughout the years that helped you navigate this more or be at least a little bit more comfortable navigating this?
Yeah, well, two things. I think today I'm able to think way more logically about it, right? There is a disconnection. I don't have this sense of belonging. But to me, like life is a series of trade offs, right? You give away here to get something right here. And we are constantly making little decisions and trade offs all the time. And I think this sense of belonging is one of the downsides of living abroad, right? It is. It is what it is. And, I try to think, on the other hand, what I'm getting from all of this, this experience. And now with little kids and, opening up opportunities for them that I myself didn't have. So that's the logical part of me, but obviously there is the emotional, like things hit and sometimes they hit hard. And it took me years of therapy, right? And talking about this topic, like constantly talking about this topic. And I think today, after hearing stories and living and having all this experience and talking about it, I have my tools to, when I feel this way, I know where to get to, right? I'm going to do things that I can, will help me shift my mindset to something else. Like literally exercise as an example, right? I go out for a run and I feel better after that. I see people, I talk to somebody randomly and read something and go back to my friends, send a message in the group, right? Connect with people that are living have the same experience as me, and I'm fine, right?
No, I agree. The sense of belonging is something so hard to explain because you go back to Brazil, you feel you don't belong anymore,
Yeah.
and you don't belong here either. You're like in between of what? It's hard to explain. So it's more like finding some ways. I love what you say about running because we are all about running here. Yeah, it's one of the thousands of tools that we have to use to pay off. Because when you live abroad, you pay a very high price.
Right.
You don't have a family and friends as close as it used to be. You don't have a lot of things. You don't have coxinha. You don't have guaraná. All the good food that we have in Brazil. Like, there's a lot of good things that you really miss on a daily basis, but there's something paying off by living abroad. So you gotta leave like checks and balances, right?
Yeah. And I think that's you end up like you choose your heart because at least for me, again, if I was to live in Brazil now, it would be really hard for me, and I would be thinking about all the time like, oh, I should be elsewhere. I should be and not be. I love Brazil so much, like I'm so proud to be from there. But I think other places might match your lifestyle more or the things that you value more when you think about living somewhere. And I think definitely, for example, living here, when I think about my routine, my day to day, matches way more my lifestyle, my personality. And sometimes people say, "Oh, because you're so brave, because you've lived abroad." And I was 23 when I moved to Colombia. And they're like, "Oh, you left your family in Brazil." And I'm like, to me, I always thought, yes, and it is very hard. And some days are harder than others. But I also think I don't think it's that hard because for me, it was always harder to think of always living the same life. Even if it's maybe moving in Brazil, that's fine. I would live in São Paulo, I would do this, I would do that. But in my perspective, I've always been like, okay, this is hard. So at the end of the day, you end up having to choose and, sitting between this trade-off of like, okay, I'm gonna lose a little bit here, but I'm gonna gain here, and then it's just life. So yeah. So do you ever think about living in other places, or you think that now with your families, you're just gonna stay here?
My husband, as I said, he vowed to never leave Chicago anymore, but every winter we promised we were gonna move to California. So calendar here is really hard. Reality is this year it has been really hard for me to live here. It was for the very first time in 10 years that I considered move abroad again. Not back to Brazil, but somewhere like me in Germany as well. I do miss a lot of good things when I was living there, but that was for the very first time that I considered leaving the US for the life that we currently living here. I know there's a lot of things happening in the political scenario that there doesn't really affect us directly, but somehow affect somehow, and it's been really tough.
Yeah. Do you consider Natalia living in a different place?
Chicago is a very comfortable place for us right now, but I don't feel attached to Chicago, right? I say comfortable because, well, first, my husband is from Chicago. He's an American from Chicago. So for me, it has been, like a kind of a smooth transition since we moved here because I know his stories, I know where he grew up, and I'm immersed in that culture inside my house. And I have two kids. One is 6 year old. She goes to the Chicago public school, which we're very happy about the system in the neighborhood. We have a great neighborhood. So, we are very comfortable right now. But I think, well, John and I, we are very open to move, right? And start again from scratch. I honestly I feel very tired right now to do that because living abroad means also taking, you know, years sometimes to build a community around you, right? If you do. If sometimes even over years, we are not able to have what we want to have. And starting from scratch, that's my major concern.
I think with kids, it makes a little bit harder.
Yeah.
So my husband is super attached. He's never gonna leave. But even if I had the chance, I was like, okay, let's go. Thinking about starting everything from the scratch, like deconstruct your life here to rebuild somewhere else. Oh my gosh.
Yeah.
It's a lot of work.
Yeah.
So with kids, I think it makes harder.
So on this topic, actually, on the having kids, because you both obviously raise your children here, what is it like raising children in the U.S.? How do you feel about it?
No, I don't know about you, but like the only thing that we can say is when we compare with our friends in Brazil that are raising kids there, because it's really hard for us to, at least for me, to compare like how is it there and here. One thing that I noticed is throughout pregnancy, they have like only one doctor to take care of you, and they see the same doctor during 9 months, and then that's the doctor that will deliver the baby. And they have like several sessions of like
Here or there?
in Brazil.
Oh, in Brazil, yeah.
In Brazil, they can do whatever like ultrasounds they want.
Yeah.
And here it's just like you see whoever is available. Whoever is available when you're like in labor is gonna deliver your baby, and then you may have like 1, 3, or 4
Yeah.
ultrasounds.
And like if you're not bleeding, don't even come to the hospital. I remember Marina saying like only call us or only come here if you're bleeding.
So,
Yeah.
something like that. So the difference, like during pregnancy, that's what I know more. Raising kids, I don't know. What do you think, Nathália?
Yeah. Well, raising kids is hard, period, right?
Everywhere.
Yeah. Outside Brazil, well, in my case, my husband being an American, right, and not speaking Portuguese, it was always something we had to figure out inside the house. No matter where we are in the world, like we have a difference inside the house. And that to me was always, my priority. We need to make this work inside before outside. So there is like a lot of cultural differences, right? I mean, we can look at many different areas of life, but like food, for example, it's hard. It's very true. Like that you can find a very healthy life, or you can go through that path here in the U.S., but it's just hard. Like you leave your house and you have so many unhealthy options, right? And it's just there close to you and easy access. So that's the one part that is hard to me, because now my daughter, the older one, she wants to make her own decisions, and every time I want to go to that burger place that we have at the corner of our house, and I don't like that idea, right? I didn't grow up with that idea of having unhealthy food, but it is what it is, and I have to accept. This is just one example. Apart from that, I try to think more from a positive standpoint. I think it's really amazing to give her this perspective of world, like me being a Brazilian and her being in Chicago, an amazing city where you have so many different cultures and people, and being able to teach her, at least inside the house, there's way more than this outside the world. So I think this is the good side of raising kids, out of your comfort zone.
And how do you incorporate the, if at all, the Brazilian culture with your kids? Because they're here, they're going to school in English. You know, they have the whole experience of that they have. Most of it is here. And maybe they go to Brazil once a year, once every 2 years. I don't know, see the grandparents. And then, do you speak Portuguese to them? What's it like? Because I know it can be hard.
I think for you it's a little bit harder as your husband is American. At home we have like both of us from Brazil, so we both speak Portuguese with her. But my daughter's 2 and she goes to daycare. She's speaking English a lot, and then what is happening now is speak with her in Portuguese and she replies in English. So we translate what she says and she's like, yeah, and then she repeats. So it's a way to a lot of books in Portuguese. And so when family comes to visit, first thing that I ask is books like in Portuguese, please, so she can read. But I think it was one of the hardest things, right?
Yeah.
Culture wise, I think it's more like your the way your lifestyle, I would say, right? Your lifestyle. So kids are like sponges. They see whatever you're doing, they're gonna do the same. So your lifestyle just bring the Brazilian lifestyle, and kids will absorb that by observing. But the language,
Yeah.
it's a challenge.
Yeah. Yeah, I think language is the major barrier. So with my first daughter, she was very much delayed in her communication compared to, the other kids. And I panicked. Because what I was trying to do is speak Portuguese, 100% Portuguese, or as much as I could. And while I knew like English is gonna be her first language because she's gonna go to kindergarten here, so you know, but at least like if she can learn the foundations, right? That would be incredible. But then she was 2.5 years old and she was not saying a single word, and I panicked. I read some research and some people that were um, they said like bilingual kids, they usually have a delay. And her doctor, he wasn't concerned about that. But the fact is, like, she was not saying anything. So I made the decision to shift to English to get her to say something. And that was great. In a few months she was speaking English, but we never went back to Portuguese. So English became the language we have in the house. And that's a problem today, right? Because she doesn't engage much with my parents. My parents, they don't speak English. So it's always complicated. We travel there and she's always frustrated. Why they don't understand me? But I try to, language, it is the main barrier, but I try to bring the culture from different ways. Like I'm obsessed with food. I want her to eat healthy. And I cook black beans. I cook, all the Brazilian food. And it's funny because she's like, my friends don't eat black beans. Why do I have to eat black beans? Because you're Brazilian. She's like, what? Like she protests a little bit sometimes. But then when we go down to Brazil, she eats all the food. She's all happy. And overall, I think things, they are great. Yeah, but the day to day, where we have these challenges that we always try to find solutions here and there.
Yeah. And I think it's good that we're talking about this because I feel like a lot of parents, they give themselves so much pressure. And we even talked about this in our friend group and how other mothers manage this with their kids because sometimes when we see kids that are maybe born here but they have a Brazilian parent and they don't speak Portuguese, people think, oh no, it's just because the mom doesn't care or the dad doesn't care, whoever's a Brazilian, they're not trying. I have a bunch of bilingual friends who were born in the US, but the parents are Brazilian. And they also say, like, it's hard. It's not easy. Like, yeah, when you're younger, maybe because your brain, it's, I don't know how it works, but they say you're speaking English the whole day. You're, with your teacher, with your colleagues, with everything. You're building your personality in this language. And then you come back home and then you speak Portuguese. And sometimes you're just like, I don't want it. So even like I think it's so much more complex than simply, oh yeah, I'm just gonna speak Portuguese with my kids and that's it. They're gonna figure it out and I think it's much more complex. It sounds like.
Plus work, because we now have some friends and a group that they said the kids are doing like Portuguese private classes, which is one thing. I do have a friend that she just moved to California. It's like projecting my drink. During the winter, she from time to time she sent, because she still has like her parents in Brazil. Send kids to Brazil to spend like during summer vacation, spend like a month or two, and hire a private teacher to teach kids like Portuguese. I think it's a great idea. While the kids are studying, they are on the beach, like taking some time off.
Yeah.
I think it's amazing, but it requires a lot of work. It's not something that's natural. Oh, just speak Portuguese at home and then you'll get it. I don't think they will, because most of the time they're speaking English.
I want to talk about the relationship with our families back home and I guess especially leaving the country and living abroad and being in a different country so far because I mean there's a direct flight to Sao Paulo, you can get to Rio, you can, whatever, but still it's like 10 hours. We're not just, hey, yeah, I'll drive there if something happens. Did you ever feel guilty by choosing to live abroad at any point throughout this 15 years or these 10 years?
Guilty, actually, no, not much. But I did feel like when I think 2 years that I was living here, I lost my uncle, and the funerals in Brazil, they happen the day after the person passed. So you don't have time, even though you can take this direct flight to São Paulo, you won't make it to the funeral. So that moment I felt how hard it was and how far away I was, because I think I haven't realized. And these things happen if there's like a friend that really needs you, and even if you have time to go and visit, support, you were very far away. So it hurts in that sense, but again, there's a trade-off with everything that you built here. It's the price you, unfortunately, that's the price you pay.
Yeah. So it's hard, but not necessarily guilt.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. I don't think I felt guilty at any time, but I felt some kind of pressure like that I had to talk to my mom every day. I have to report what's going on, right? And this is like when I was living back in Singapore, which is like 13 hours difference from Brazil.
Wow.
So, and I had that pressure. I need to talk to her because I need to talk to her. I don't even know where this is coming from. And then for years, this was really hard because many times I just couldn't talk to her, and I felt bad. And next day I need to catch up, and the next day, until I got to a point that I don't know why I putting this pressure on me. Right, this model doesn't work anymore. It used to work when I was there, but being out here, it doesn't work. But it takes long until it clicks. These are the little things that are hurting you, and you don't even realize where they're coming from. So it took me several years to click and just realize that I can't talk to her every day. It's physically becoming possible. So let me find a new model, right? And yeah, that was something I discovered over time, which could be similar to this feeling of feeling guilty, but it's basically just like a process to adjust to what works.
Yeah. I feel the same way. I also had that when I moved. I'd be like, oh, I have to report to my mom every day and tell her everything and I think it's an adjustment. I know what it was like for you, but I think it's an adjustment for them as well because they're also getting used to having their children living abroad and not being there all the time and not being there for every special occasion and not being there any hour of the day and having to get used to the time change. And I think, I don't know, sometimes that can be challenging because they also have expectations and then you have to manage those expectations. And I don't know, I think it's like a chapter of the relationship with either the family or even friends as well, right? Back home. Yeah. What about with friends? Because I feel like, so most of my friends are not in Brazil anymore. I would say actually, yeah, I still got a few, but I have most of them are in Colombia. Some of them are here. I have others in like Europe. So they're all kind of spread out. How do you keep in touch with these friends? And also, how do you make new friends when you like, how do you make new friends when you moved here, for example? How do you create that community that you were talking about?
How do we make new friends here?
Guys, my phone number is 224. Text me and let's hang out because
Or you just create a group of Brazilians in Chicago. It's how you make new friends.
Yeah,
Should it can be helpful sometimes. Running club helped me a lot when I started, but making your friends as we get older, it's super hard. One thing that I noticed with friendship is the friends that I had that whose friendship was not super strong, it faded really fast. So those are the friends that they ended up disappearing throughout the years, and those that change with you, they, regardless where they live, they always gonna make their way to show up and be with you. We are very lucky because we have technology. Like we have FaceTime, we have WhatsApp. They can send memes. They're gonna send love languages. They're gonna make their way to show up and say, I'm still here for you. And same with you. But those that are not super strong, I think it ended up like fading throughout the years. New friends, if I can make a recommendation for those who are planning to live abroad, don't count on your coworkers because it's different. In Brazil, it's completely different. In Brazil, you may have some friends at work. Here, it's really, really, really hard. I would say 99% chances won't have a friend from your work environment.
Yeah, I agree with you. Like you need to find your groups, right? But it's not just finding, but in having the discipline and the energy, right, to make that happen too. You need to put a lot of effort in that. And that's the part that's hard, right? Because we find we can join groups here and there, but to me at least, making that effort to keep that going is really hard because we are all busy, right? Life is busy and it's hard to match calendars, right? And then we go back to the kids topic, right? Kids demand a lot, and then you start doing different things with the kids. So you end up at the end of the day exhausted. I'll text this person tomorrow, but that tomorrow never comes, right? And you're always and yeah, it's really hard. I guess for me, what changed is really after my daughter went to the daycare, and then you start meeting parents here and there. We have groups of people, but like it's hard to find that deep relationship, like that those people that you connect, right? You understand each other and build that strong relationship.
I think shifting, but not shifting much, off the topic. One thing that I remember when I got here, the Americans are super nice at first. Like the first impression is always really good, right? So when you meet someone, could be, I don't know, coworker, neighbor, whatever, random person, but first time you meet, they're really, really nice. But the way they behave in Brazil, it's understood as they want to be my friend. So yeah, I made a friend.
Yeah.
And turns out the person disappears because it's just like that moment they were really nice with you. It doesn't mean they want to be your friends
Yeah.
forever. So it took me many, many years to realize that. So the running club was something, I'm Buddhist, so the Buddhism community was also something that helped. But it took me many years to realize these cultural differences and see and understand how I really can make friends for life here versus in Brazil.
Yeah, because I guess so the maintaining the friendships, I agree with that. I think that or the making the effort to develop that friendship. I think that's what's hardest for me as well. Because I think there's an aspect which is being an adult, it's already harder to make friends and then, put in the effort because you're so busy. There's so much you can do for you all, even more because you have kids. But then on top of that, you're also in a different culture. So you're trying to navigate that as well and understand if, okay, does a person want to be my friend or are they just being nice? Like, what is this? So you're also being hyper aware sometimes and trying to figure out what that is. And for me, I think I've also sometimes I go to a running club a group every now and then, and like I just show up and I'm like, hey guys, like, hey, hey, and I show up again. And I saw this girl once talking about this quote unquote technique that it's like you go out with a person 3 times, and then after the third time, you should know, like with a friend, right? You should know whether like this is gonna develop into a friendship or yeah, no, we're not. a fit. That's fine. So similar to dating, I guess. So you're like, you try to go out 3 times and then from there you see where it goes, but like three would be the number. And then the other thing that you mentioned was saying if you really hit it off with someone, saying, "Oh, is there someone else that you think I should meet?" And then this person who you hit it off with introduces you to someone else. But when she was saying this, what I was thinking is, oh my gosh, it takes a lot of effort. Like, yeah, let me go out with this person 3 times. And sometimes I find myself in this battle, internal battle, which is like, oh, I wanted to have more friends. But then the weekend comes and I'm like, oh, I don't think so. Next weekend, which is also one thing that I like about our group, which is everyone makes the effort to be there once a month. And, most of us show up. I love it because I think it's consistent. And sometimes it's hard to be consistent with the day to day and everything.
So as years go by, it's quality versus quantity. So when you're younger, it's all about quantity, that huge group to go with you and enjoy your time at Tomorrowland in Belgium. And then now it's all about, okay, my 5 close friends. It's quality. You really want to spend like quality time with people that you want to, and you're like closer.
What else do we got about living abroad? I think that's most of the things that I wanted to cover. Oh, I had one question that was, what part of the experience has been the most humbling? I don't even know how to answer that one.
I think to me was when I got an offer from Vale, the mining company I worked for, to move to a role in Singapore. My perspective was, well, Singapore is a small country. They are bringing talents from all over the world to train their people, and they are bringing expats to train their people, and then you are going to live there for a couple of years or even more, and then you go back home. And my perspective was like, I'm 26. This is, wow, an amazing opportunity, and I know a lot, right? I know a lot. So I'm going there because they don't know what I know. That was the thinking, right? Until I landed there and face a completely different world from what I had inside my mind. Like, I realized I didn't know much, and that was shocking. And I don't know if this is like because you're a young person, you have a big ego naturally, or what it is, but I think that experience was to me was the most shocking, because I realized I don't know anything, right? I was experienced situations where I am sitting with a customer, and customer means like mostly in Asia, Southeast Asia, and China. And then in between us, there's somebody translating, and then you have somebody speaking Chinese, a translator speaking English, and me still with a broken English, right? Not really getting much out of that. And those kind of experience was like, it was what made me mature quite faster. Like, I have to learn, I have to open my mind and really understand and face it that I don't know anything. And I think, it was really helpful for me to mature, which I do think the experience made me mature faster than I would if I was in Brazil.
So I also had a similar experience that when I moved here, I'm like, I was so sure of myself. I'm like, oh, but I know all these things and I know this, I know that, and I've done this before. Oh, and I was recognized by this in my previous company. And last year I was like, I suck. I'm the worst person in the world. This is terrible. Like, you go to another extreme because your ego at that point is so fragile, because you're like, if I'm not everything that I thought I was, because I found out that I don't know as much as I thought I would, or more people know as much as I do, when you have that realization that, like, okay, I have so much more to learn, and that ego moment, then I feel like, for me at least, I went to the other extreme, that I'm like, I don't know who I am, because if I was who I believed I was there, and now I'm seeing that I'm not all that, then who am I? And it was great because, like, it completely destroyed my ego at that moment, and it made me like build up the idea of myself again. And I realized that it's like, yeah, it's not about what you know, because at the end of the day, you know nothing. And it's going to continue to be this way. Like you can learn and you will learn and you become better at this, better at that. But then you change countries, or you change companies, or you change whatever. And then the bar raises. And then all of a sudden, hey, you don't know as much as you thought. So I think it's not about knowing, but about your ability to expand, to adapt, to find yourself again and again and again and again and again. So, but yeah, it was really humbling for me. And yeah.
Yeah, I think I'm along this. I'm with you guys because it's pretty much the same. You think you know a lot, and one thing that was always my superpower was the fact that I studied in Brazil in good universities, and that I had like my diplomas was they were my superpower. And I remember when I got here, I was in a conversation where someone they were I think they're all Americans, but a lady, they was saying, "Oh, I went to school in XYZ. Oh, that's my friend went there too. How about you?" And she said, "Oh, it's another school in the US. How about you?" And then when was my turn, I was ready to reply and kind of explain myself, like was in Brazil, but they were gonna. She didn't even ask. She completely passed it because she was like, whatever she went to school, it's not in the US, so it's like her behavior, of course, it's not gonna count. So that I felt, okay, though my superpower is what I thought I knew that would be my use that a superpower here, it doesn't work anymore. So that was like a reality chat for me. And then you think, even English, the vocabulary that you have, what you learn in Brazil when you got here is like, I got this. And then you just went out there and 2 weeks were like, I don't get anything what this guy is saying.
Yeah. Oh,
And
yeah.
it's a process.
Yeah, and it takes very long, right? It's a long process. Like even nowadays, like I ask somebody a question or say something, and the person doesn't understand me, but I'm like, oh, but it's all English in my mind, right? I said everything in English, but it's the way you structure that, right? The way you structure that, it's not exactly what this person is open to receive and understand. But this to me, like if we go back years ago, it was hard, right? I always thought, oh, I have a problem. Right? The problem is here in me, and I have to fix myself, and that constantly taught. But over time, you realize, like, you know what, that's what it is, and I also need to come from this person's perspective as well, and keep trying.
Hmm. What do you think the balance is between adapting in a culture and owning a part of you that maybe is more connected to another culture? For example, at what point do you say, yeah, I'm just going to be this way. This is who I am. This is like, okay, maybe I speak loud and people here don't speak loud. Maybe I do because I'm from Brazil. Maybe I don't take as many pauses. And I'm just going to own it. I'm not going to do anything about it because this is me. And at what point are you like, I need to adapt this. I need to change this. I need to be more like them.
I think it's a process. You kind of learn day to day or different situations that you go through and realize that why didn't go so well. And then it takes time for you to process and understand and then change next time you face the same situation. Then you'll be open to or not. Like accent, accent is the best example because we have French friends and they are very proud of their accents and everybody understands what they say. And then comes me with my Brazilian accent. They're like, what to say? And at first I was like, oh my God, I'm the problem. Like,
Yeah.
I'm the problem. I need to change. And yes, you change or adapt, you use words that are more applicable. They're going to make understand better. Accent, we're going to have forever.
Yeah.
We were never going to be American. We are never going to have this like perfect English. We'll do our best to sound like, but we always will have accent. And I can't wait for my daughter to grow up and correct my English.
Yeah, I think yeah, you get to a point that you start letting things go, right? And to me, like what is strong is gonna stay. no matter what language you speak, what is in there is real, it's gonna stay. And if it doesn't stay, it's because it's not real. So it's not worth the effort. I think I use the 3 times rule as well. I didn't even know I used, but I after you said, I'm like, yeah, I kind of do that. It's funny. Unconsciously, yeah, but I do that. But then at some point, it's like, why? If it's starting to hurt me, it's not worth it. So I just let it go more easily than I did before, I guess.
How do you feel about accent? Because you briefly mentioned, like, okay, accent is something that we're all always gonna have. Is it something that you still try to hide or like be more like sound more American, or have you changed your perspective completely and you're like, yeah, this is who I am?
Yeah, I understood that, yes, I have accent. I'll always have this accent. I'm sorry for those who don't like my accent, but it's gonna be there forever. The thing is, when started, when I just moved here, then I see people struggling to understand me, then it kind of like bothered me so much that I used to lose my thought process. So everything that came out of my mouth was cranky because I was not really like following a thought process. I was just like observing the other person's face, and it was like was super weird. Now I'm like, if you don't understand, I will say whatever I have to say, and in the end, I'm gonna ask you in case I see like just a weird face. I'll ask,
Yeah.
"Am I clear?" And then if not, I would try to explain a different way. But accent, it is what it is. If you have problems with my accent, just don't be my friend.
Oh.
Oh. Same. Yeah. Same. And yeah. And I guess at work is harder, right? You need to deliver in the end of the day, right? Things needs to be done. People need to understand you. So you need to communicate well. But it also has the limits.
Yeah.
I'm always very open for trying in different ways at work and to get to the final objective. And I don't need to speak English perfectly because again, I was not born here, right? That was not my first language and will always be, some a challenge. So it doesn't need to be perfect to get to the final result. So to me, it's more like it's great to enjoy the process, but if I can't, let's focus on the final result. Yeah.
Yeah, I think that it's important to talk about accent and the language itself because I think sometimes we also get overly sensitive to this topic and we're like, oh, I'm just going to speak English the way that I want and whatever. And I'm more objective in that sense of saying, especially at work, we need to deliver. So people need to understand me. Also, I live in this country and if I don't speak the language well enough, it doesn't have to be perfect, but if it's not good enough, then I don't connect. Like at the end of the day, the language is the currency that you use with the country. It is what it is. So I don't like the also the attitude that sometimes people have that it's like, "Oh, no, I'm just gonna speak my broken English and I'm not ever gonna try to improve it." This is not an accent conversation because you can speak perfect English and have an accent. But like first developing a language and becoming fluent. So I think you do have to put time and effort into being able to communicate yourself the best possible way, deliver results, whatever, especially at work. Now, accent is a different story because you can speak fluent English and you're always going to have an accent, just like you said. And for me, I think that I was very hard on myself in the beginning because my mindset was we're already, having to deliver presentations or you have a customer meeting. I don't want it. They're already going to not understand certain things that I say because it's the nature of what we do. Like sometimes I'm going to say something to you. It's not going to make sense, not because of the language, but because of the content. Like sometimes I'm talking about something that can be complex to you. And even if I was speaking my native language, even if I was speaking Portuguese, you would ask for me to repeat it because you wouldn't understand what I'm saying. Right. So there's the layer of communication that is what you're saying in the first place, regardless of the language. And I had this situation before in Colombia that I was saying something and this lady and I weren't at work. She wasn't able to understand what I was saying, but not because of the language, but because she was thinking of A and I was thinking of B. We're thinking of different things. Anyway, so my point is, I was like, I don't want language to be another roadblock in, communicating with someone about what I have to communicate at work. So I thought that, okay, I have to really try to have their accent, speak with their intonation, and what is it? The tones, whatever. See? And I cannot make any mistakes. And this is, it has to be perfect. It's not going to be perfect. It's not. We're not from here. And it's actually awesome because it makes us unique. Not unique, but you know what I mean. Um, so I think it has to be good enough to the point that you can communicate and express your ideas. But yeah, it's not going to be accent wise. You're always going to have an accent, and the ways that you phrase things is going to be different. So I like what you said too. If you see a person making a face, then you complete your thought and then you say, am I clear? Like, did I make myself clear? Whatever. So one thing that I did that helped me kind of in this process as well was, I feel like when you are immersed in the culture and everyone is from here and they all obviously speak English because they were born and raised here. I think it's very easy for us to hyper focus on the imperfection of our English. We're always like, oh, but it's not perfect enough. It's not good enough. Oh, but this word, I pronounce this word this way. I pronounce this word that way because your source of comparison is someone who is from here. So you always focus on what you lack because you see that they have too much of that you lack, right? So they speak really well, whatever. Which by the way, even if someone's from here, they can speak shitty English, even being an American. Like I've whatever. Anyway, but my point is, one thing that I did that helped me was I started seeing some people online, like on social media, with a thick accent, but being able to express their personalities in such a beautiful way that I'm like, this person is awesome. So I started to compare myself with people that are also immigrants and people there, but you can see that they own who they are and they're happy to be who they are. And yes, they speak with an accent, and it's awesome. And I remember one day I was in this room with my friend, and she was like, it was a bunch of us, and she was commanding the room. Like everyone's paying attention to what she was saying, everyone was laughing. She was like, it was amazing, and they loved the fact that the way that we speak, like we sing, right? So the way that we speak certain words is like, people were loving that. They were like, "This is awesome," and I'm like, "Oh my gosh, I also have that." So at that moment, you start owning these things more, and they're not a flaw anymore. They're not something that you have to fix, but like, yeah, it's actually not only okay, but it's beautiful to be this way, and it's awesome. So I also think that we need more influences of people that are from other countries and that, have a different approach to this. I think at least it's been really helpful to me.
Yeah, we're gonna keep chasing your perfect English, but perfection is a trap.
Yeah.
You know that. So we're gonna be either like trapped to be the perfect speaker forever, or you just embrace the accent and move forward.
Yeah. And communication is much more than that. That's the other thing that I think about because again, I know many Americans that cannot deliver a good presentation. Perfect English, but the communication skills are not there. So I also try to kind of step back a little bit and be like, okay, communication is much more than just this. In fact, I also think that because it's not a first language, we have one advantage, which is we're gonna prepare more. We're gonna, so all of these things, and like you're gonna learn how to be concise, and you have to learn because otherwise, because it's not your first language, you're always gonna try to fill in the blanks and like the gaps. To your point about the pauses, so you have to like consciously train more. I think, which I now see as an advantage, and I even see like ABBA, like the musical group. What is it? I watched a documentary once that they said that one of the reasons why their lyrics were so popular is that English wasn't their first language or the people who wrote the songs. So the songs were so simple that they were catchy. And then they became, what they became. And I'm like, that's awesome. So that's great. So I think the perspective really can change how we see this.
And I think a lot of the pressure is inside us, right? We put way too much pressure on, something that in certain situations people are genuinely trying to understand you.
Yeah.
Right? Because they don't speak a second language, right? They're not used of thinking in a different way. So they're really trying hard, and we need to help them. So there are like several cases like that. And I think it's really important to always think about this possibility as well instead of going back to us and putting more pressure. Like, I need to be perfect. He's not understanding me because I am not doing a good job in clarifying, making it clear to him. But yeah. So,
I agree.
yeah.
All right, final thoughts about living abroad. Any advice for someone who's thinking about moving from their country to another country?
Yeah, I would, first thing I would do is really to try to find my groups as fast as possible. Because I think without that community, without people you trust, it makes the experience way harder. So my advice number one is like, move to a country and go find your groups as fast as possible.
I like that. I'll go take a step back. Why do you want to move? Why do you want to live abroad? Because I think people have an idea about living abroad that sometimes is not true. I saw during this decade that I spent here, people that came, spent like 4 or 5 years and moved back. And they were so criticized. So criticized. Oh my gosh, you're crazy. I cannot believe you're moving back to Brazil. Guys, the idea that we create is not the same thing that it is not, it can be different than the real thing. The reality here is different. So understand, what are they looking for before making the decision? Why do you want to live abroad? I want to live abroad because I want to have an experience, but I want to move back. I want to live abroad because I'm sure, 100% sure, I don't fit here anymore, and I want to live in this particular country forever. And I'm gonna embrace the cold. I'm gonna embrace the accent. I'm gonna embrace like people not being as warm as we are, or whatever differences it will come with. Keep in mind, it's a combo. You have a lot of good things. You have access to a lot of things here. I'm gonna say in the U.S. in particular, you have quality of life, have access with to a lot of things. But yes, we're gonna be away from your family or friends, and the weather might be a challenge too. So it's gonna be tough. So, but if you're willing to embrace, you're more than welcome to come. But open mind. Keep your mind very open to what we're gonna face when we live abroad.
Yeah. Love that. Agree with both. I would say, I would say don't panic when you realize it's hard because we come with this idea and the first month is beautiful, the second, the third, the sixth month, it's because it's everything's so new and you're like, oh my gosh, look at this street, look how gorgeous this apartment is, you know. And then at some point reality hits, which is this is life, just like, in anywhere else. And maybe it's a life that makes more sense to you, but this process of adapting can be challenging, and it's challenging for everybody, for some more than others. But that's why I wanted to have this episode. And the reason why I also like to openly talk about this is that I wouldn't go back on this decision by any means. But I also think that we have to talk about, how we're hyper aware when we're talking to people. And we're always thinking, okay, am I saying the right thing? Am I not saying the right thing? How you're always kind of trying to mirror them, how you're always trying to. So I think these things are important because it can feel very isolating and very lonely. Some people think it's only with them. Oh, I'm the problem. I'm the problem. But no, everyone who lives abroad needs to face the fact that they're probably always going to be chasing the feeling of belonging, and they're going to go back home and it's not going to feel the same, and they're going to come back and it's not going to feel the same. And yeah, and there are trade-offs, and it's life. So I think it's not easy, it's worth it, and don't panic. I mean, if it aligns with your why, don't panic because you're gonna find your way. Luisa, what's your advice? How long have you been here again? 6, 7 years.
Well, fine. But with all of our you said, it's hard. You need to find a community. I do appreciate it to have the right reasons to live abroad because it's so many people also when it was so popular to go to Portugal. At least from my city, a lot of people went. Living abroad is like the best. And then like 3 months, like not even like long time, they were back and like, oh no, that it's just you're going with the wrong expectations. Things will change and you change. So see if it still makes sense. Keep always having this conversation if it makes sense for you. But it is life. No one has all the answers. Then life in different places will be the same thing. So just doing what we supported at the moment, I guess.
Right. All right, so I don't know. All right, so I don't know if I'm just thinking that maybe they couldn't hear you, but she said aligning expectations. You gave the example of Portugal, which is great that you said it because so many people went to Portugal. Aligning expectations. We're never gonna have all the answers, so always reassess and find your community. Yay! All right, friends. Thank you. I hope you had fun. I loved it. I really enjoyed it, and I'll see you on the next episode of the Adults Table.